Well, good morning, Gladys. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing well too, and you look fabulous and you sound fabulous, and I'm really excited to talk to you this morning about everything going on in your world.
Yes.
And yeah, we are joined by Gladys Muñoz. She is the founder of IntiNova Consulting Services, and I'm really excited to learn more about everything that's associated with IntiNova Consulting. I know you work a lot to help businesses overcome their challenges. I know you do so much in the diversity space. So I'm excited to jump into all of that with you, Gladys. I find it most interesting to start that you you hail from Peru. You now
Yeah.
live here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That must have been quite quite a transformative moment for you in your
Yes.
personal life.
Yes.
I'm excited to learn more about how that's kind of influenced your perspective and your approach to what you're doing with Intinova.
Yeah, of course. So to start off, IntiNova was created by my family, my mother and my aunt. So Inti is an indigenous Quechua word from
Mm,
the mountain ranges of Peru, which translates to the Incan sun god. But it also has other meanings like life and power and energy. So
love
when
it.
I was creating the name, I love the name Inti. It's always resonated with me. And so with innovación, so Nova or
Nova.
innovation in English,
Innovation, yeah.
my mom and my aunt merged it, so that's how it happened.
I
So that
love
was
it.
the it's the birth of Inti Nova. So that's how it happened. In English, it's Inti Nova. So it sounds the same. So and
I love the combination of innovation and Inti and
mhm,
that's beautiful. Yeah.
and that's part of my culture, right? So
Mhm.
I was born in Lima, Peru. I migrated to the States with my family when I was 8 years old. So I resettled in Miami, Florida, which when I look back at it, living there, definitely Spanish is the main language. And so that transition period of
Sure.
like acculturation process
Sure.
wasn't as difficult. However, my family decided to live in separate areas, so
Okay.
low income housing areas, just for accessibility purposes. And
Makes
so
sense.
that influenced my world, especially when it came to, social economic justice as well as like health inequities and disparities.
I can imagine.
And oh yeah, definitely. And I went to University of South Florida for my undergraduate degree in public health. And so how I came to Boston is always a big question is that after I was done with my Peace Corps service, so I served in an indigenous Mayan village in
Mhm.
Guatemala in the Western Highlands. I relocated to Boston because then my partner, now spouse, was living here. And I'm like, oh, sounds great. I've always wanted to live in
Perfect.
seasons. And
Yeah.
that's how I ended up here.
That's how you end up here. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
First of all, USF, the Bulls, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's right. We'll get that out of the way. I had some friends who went to USF. That's wonderful. And I just learned something about you. In my research, I somehow did not see that you had volunteered with the Peace Corps and that
Yeah.
you had been part of this experience to Guatemala. I'm sure this multilingual, multicultural background that you have, I'm sure it's really shaped you and your work.
Definitely. I think one, my identity. So for those who do not know, Peru is a huge melting pot of
Mm,
ethnicities and racial background. So my dad is black and Japanese, and my mom is indigenous and white. So
mm,
what that means is I'm mixed race, right?
yeah.
So when folks in the Latinx or Hispanic community identify, they tend to mostly do by country of origin.
Mm,
When you take that construct out, it's not like the United States where you're black or white, etc.
right.
Right? Oh,
Right.
it's
Much
just
a
more by
little bit more.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think with my family, I grew up going to Japanese school, like learning how to count and stuff because my
Sure.
dad wanted us to be ingrained with that
Understand a
piece.
little
So,
bit of that culture. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So, in a sense, diversity has always been a nature to me. It's not something
I
that we
love it.
see now in these spaces where we have to be, DEI, which is
Mm,
now like going into the corporate sociability,
yes.
social
Yes.
responsibility sector
Right.
right now.
Right.
And so it's just been part of who I am. And so without that, how was I able to accomplish any of these, successes and milestones
I
too?
love it. I love it. I love how your background, like I said, has really connected you, shaped you, really thought about how you do your consulting work, how you connect with your clients. Beautiful. I have become a big fan of what you're doing on social media. I love following you.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
I love the passion, Gladys, in what you're doing. again, especially as you are focusing on biracial people of color. You are focusing on the LGBTQ plus community, women of color, entrepreneurs. I know this is very important to you as you've just kind of given
Yes.
us the background, but you're also very passionate about sustainable growth for your clients. So how do
Yes.
you balance all of that? Your mission. Plus, look, we all have business realities, right? So I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about that, Gladys.
Yeah, of course. So I think one of my business models in consulting is very unique because it's a different target market, right?
Hmm.
I'm supporting entrepreneurs that have the concept of idea, they just don't know how to execute it.
Right.
Other folks are currently have a business, or other folks are want to grow, but they don't know how or how to
Right.
exit your business. There's so many
Mm,
different stages in the business life cycle.
mhm.
But I think for me, giving back to my community is a way to how do we empower these entrepreneurs that there's a lot of barriers to access one healthcare, but also to gain financial capital is another. There's so many barriers involved.
Right.
And so it's like I have all this power, privilege, and education. How can I tailor my consulting services to
Sure.
that? So an example is one of my clients, she owns a bodega in Somerville, right? And
Hmm.
so she was having difficulty in her marketing strategy, right? And I give her huge kudos for being an immigrant. Spanish is her preferred language. And so, how did you start a bodega with all these barriers? But she did it, and
She
that's
did it. Yeah.
resiliency. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for her, one of her biggest challenges, like, I want to sell some of my merchandise on the internet, I just don't know how. And so, okay, what is it that you're capable of doing at this time for you to learn that skill? So, sustainability, people think about most from that lens is okay, like how are we are when we're not here, that's a component, but
Right.
how are you going to get the individual there? So me and my team taught her how to use social media.
Hmm.
So just the foundations, because a lot of small to medium enterprises don't know that Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and WhatsApp business is all free.
Right.
And so if you're able to use that to your advantage, great. So we showed her how to do the basics, right? She
Right.
wanted to sell some of her clothes on Facebook Marketplace. And that teacher to teacher training approach is
Mm,
really important for clients' growth, especially when you're trying to improve your business model, or you're trying to scale, or you're trying to be innovative. Because if I'm not teaching you the tools, then I'm actually not doing my job.
right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of, folks in the I get it. Sometimes in this industry, it's very like, this is my project scope. I'm going to do it. I'm going to give you my actions, and then I'm out. That's
Right.
fine. I also work in that way too. But for
Right.
most of my clients, that to continue this relationship, it's like, okay, what do we need to do so I can get you set up for success? Right?
I appreciate that so much, Gladys, because as you were speaking about, sustainability has multiple meanings, right? And
Mhm.
it's about, yes, we want to be able to carry on when we're not there, right? Or just be able to carry on in a way that we're not always, kind of struggling to carry on, right? And
Yeah.
have some of that. But you just said something I think was really important, Gladys, when people may have some of these misconceptions about, the consulting industry where you kind of just drop in, say a bunch of stuff and drop out, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't sound like that's your model at all.
It's not,
Yeah.
because number one, how I set myself apart from traditional consulting firms, and again, every organization runs differently. I think
Right.
for me is I really like to build client relationships, right?
Mm.
Because I've been in their shoes. Like I don't speak the language very well. I used to be a professional in my home country because it was where my
Right.
parents used to run their own business in Peru. So how do I bring that skill here?
Right.
Right?
Right. Yep.
How do we access resources, right? So
Mm.
it's more of that coaching mentality. And also, like, I truly like building relationships. For like another client of mine, she makes tamales.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
sometimes she gives me some, right? Because to me that speaks a
That's
lot of
awesome.
volumes, right?
Right.
And also empathy. I think historically in these industries, it's very like, what's the outcome? And that's great. And I also focus on that, but mine is more of my DEI, my compassion, my empathy,
Right.
and also getting to know people's, because
Yep.
once you find out their true motivations, it doesn't necessarily align with what their current business model is
Yeah.
operating.
Truly.
And a lot
And
of people don't think that way.
right, and
It's
then there's
very
maybe an alignment, right? There's an alignment that
yeah.
has to take place for sure,
Yep.
right? To stay true to their mission, but also do that in a way where they can have a successful business model, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's
Exactly.
where your advice and counsel comes so far into play.
Yes.
I
Definitely.
mentioned your content a little bit ago, Gladys, and I said, I love it. There's a lot of energy there, right? There's a lot of passion there. So you got a lot of people pulling on you, your clients, etc. How do you personally stay inspired and innovative in your approach to not just your content, but just in general, your business and how you help businesses thrive and succeed? How do you stay innovative and inspired?
I stay inspired by my community. So
Mhm.
so for example, yesterday I attended an event, a community event where I was a vendor. And historically speaking, a lot of consulting companies don't go to these community events, that had, it was an artist collective,
Sure. Yeah, like yeah, because
session.
there's no business for you there per se necessarily, right?
Correct. But I
Yeah.
was like, no, because the greatest people with ideas and innovation are in these spaces, but they're
Sure.
not giving the
Creatives.
opportunity. That's true. And so I'm like, okay, let me go. And that's when I started getting ideas. There was a great panel discussion about how to nurture ourselves, how to be successful. And I
Mhm.
thought it was great
Mm,
insights because I'm like, oh, that's a really good perspective. How can I bring this to another client of mine who
right.
is encountering similar challenges? Right.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's the learnability piece I think
Sure.
that I have. My cultural humility lens as well is that I don't know everything and I stay on top of trends. Yes, there's the market trends
Sure.
that's easier to get access, but to truly understand business
The
owners and what
buzz.
the buzz, it's actually going to be spaces.
Right. Yep.
And I love it because I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh, really great insight. I met some folks. I had like a raffle sweepstakes yesterday, which actually went pretty well for like
Nice.
folks that wanted a free hour consultation because I'm like, I want to get to know you. And even if this
Yeah.
doesn't turn into a lead, that's fine because at least you remember, my face and like how
Sure.
also we can
Right.
help each other
Well, and the
too.
fact that you were willing to give an hour of your time to those folks, I'm sure, they're very appreciative of that, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so and I love what you said too about like, this is how you keep your kind of, because we all talk about like, oh, you need your ear to the ground. And you can easily say that, right? You could say, yeah, yeah, keep your ear to the ground, but it's a different actual um uh initiative to go and like you say participate in these community events and walk around and talk face to face with people, even if again it's not exactly your target market or your ideal customer profile, let's say. But I like what you just said about the humility aspect too as well, right? Like you just don't know what you don't know, and you're being humble about that, right? And whoever, and again, you're keeping your ear to the ground and hearing what is really affecting the community, and maybe you can help, right?
Right,
Yep.
because like where I was yesterday, I was at a community event in Lynn, and I didn't realize that perspective of so much creativity and artistry there. And
Mm,
living in Salem, Mass, it's a different perspective. Right now, the community main focus is on spooky Halloween, which I understand, right? It's a main source of
it's a big
tourism.
piece of their tourism, yeah.
Right, right. But over there, it was a kind of break from this reality because I'm like, I was reflecting throughout
Right.
this morning. Actually, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of innovators in that space that if I was in their shoes and I needed coaching to start this business idea, where would I be?
Yeah,
Right. And
I love it.
so, and that's where I was there. And I met with young people as well who, are still, they're about to graduate high school and they want to start their own business. And I'm like, yeah, come to one of my business workshops that I do that are mostly free,
Yeah.
because I believe in accessibility. And also, you might, that might be a client one day.
Yeah,
You never know.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the bodega that you are
Yeah.
helping in Somerville. I'm curious as to maybe one of your more remarkable or memorable experiences, Gladys, with any of your clients. Kind of you went in maybe with one assumption or perspective and you walked out and you were like, wow, that was not at all what I
Yeah.
thought it was going to be, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I think definitely one of my clients was a manufacturing company.
Hmm.
And so their perspectives were very more corporate focused, whereas,
Hmm.
my mission and values might be a little bit different than theirs. But I think one
Sure.
of the key
Yeah, absolutely.
takeaways that,
Especially when
yeah,
you're focusing more on women entrepreneurs and people of color and LGBTQ community. Yeah.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think for them, something that was a huge takeaway was they didn't realize that they were not up with the times when it came to marketing and
Mm,
strategy.
very
Because a
important.
lot of SMEs, so small to medium enterprises, we think social media is one component, it's not,
Right.
right? And so I think for them, they were just so focused on these trade shows and pop-ups, and there was nothing on the internet. And I thought I was a huge disconnect because you're missing a huge market here
Yeah, for
of
sure.
what you can be selling to parents, these products that you have. And their reasoning was just like, we don't know how. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh my God,
That's
how
not a
can
good
I?
excuse. Yeah.
That's not it's not a good excuse, but it's also learning perspective too,
Sure.
because
Yeah,
they've been in
absolutely.
siloed for so many years. And for, me and my team to be like, actually, there's other ways to do this. And at the end, what they wanted was a huge rebrand.
Yeah.
So it went further than that. So it worked out to our advantage, but just to see that, okay, like I think the way they're doing the marketing approach, it's working, but they also need to focus on the branding. Like, who is their identity, right?
Yeah. No, that
Because
makes
right
sense.
now, it's a huge part of your business. Who is your identity? How do you
Yes.
grow? Where do you see your value? They didn't have any of that. So it was a
Value
lot of
statements. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, so how do you want to get there? Where do you see? And so
Mm.
at the end of the day, they were really happy with our, our services and what we produce. But it was one of those key takeaways. I'm like, I think they learned more from us in this time under 6 months than anywhere else in their lifetime because they didn't realize like they're missing opportunities,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially from that level of like um corporate
Mhm.
lens. It's like that's our job to like give you that aha moment of
Right,
like,
absolutely.
where can I go from here to sell? I'm like, how about Target? You can sell some of your products there. They
Right.
love supporting, there's different ways to go about it. And I think that was a hard to see them on Zoom and be like, oh, like
Oh, the
yes,
aha moments. Yeah,
the
for
aha
sure.
moment. And that
Yeah.
brings me joy, honestly. So it's like something clicked. Like, okay, you kind of see where we're going. How do we get there is
How do
the
we get
next
there? Yep.
question.
Yeah. I really appreciate too what you just said about, changing with the times or kind of, and sort of the some of the social you hinted a little bit on some of like the social responsibility pieces there. Like consumerism has really changed, right? I think of, my parents are baby boomers. I'm a Gen Xer. And, we may have looked to consume a service or a product that met our needs, that was a good price, that we saw value in, but I look at my daughter's generation, this Gen Z generation, she's 22, and they also want a good value and a price and something that meets their needs, but they're also very focused on the mission of the company, what the company stands for,
Yeah,
right? You know, um, and that now factors in significantly into their buying decision, doesn't it?
it does.
Yeah.
And I think corporations are trying to catch up. Like you have
Right.
these luxury brands like Louis Vuitton and Mont Blanc who are trying to market to Gen Z, given and now Gen Alpha, which are the huge economic force that's driving consumerism in the
Absolutely.
market,
Yeah.
if you think
Yep.
about it.
Mhm.
And their buying decisions have changed because if I like, for example, a millennial like myself, sure, I'll go to the bodega owner, sure, I can get some things on the way. Whereas Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that might be their preferred choice as opposed to like a larger store,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
Because
because they want the local community aspect, or they believe in the mission, or anything else,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach, especially how you see a lot of businesses trying to showcase more of who they are, and that's where
Mhm.
storytelling comes in. And also, what is your value? What do you contribute to this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I
Because
love it.
people want to feel more connected. I think a great example of a brand like that is I think about all the beauty industries. Like
Yes.
you
Huge.
see it's a huge
Mhm.
industry.
Yep.
And they also showcase behind the scenes. People want to feel that connection and that loyalty perspective and also understand these ingredients like the beauty clean part
The
sub
clean industry,
sorry,
right? And
free.
and yeah,
It's
and yeah, the humane
huge
aspects, and yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Yep.
vegan
Yep.
free that was never there when I was at USF or undergrad. That didn't exist. And now it's like, oh, is this vegan? There's like 4 different
Right.
skin
Right. Is
colors.
this really cruelty free? Is it vegan?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think of the
And
beauty industry too is how much it's changed around the work that it's doing to recognize, people of color and the importance of
Mhm.
having products that really align to people's culture, right? Where you didn't see that even 10 or 15 years ago.
No, and the only innovator, if I could say, is Rihanna. And one of her quotes, and
Right.
I'm misquoting probably, is like, I just did colors because of what my people like from my inner
Right.
circle, what
Right.
their skin tones were. For her, it made sense.
Yeah.
But for the industry was like, oh my God, we never thought about. I'm like,
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, kind of. Maybe you should have. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm also smiling, Glass, because this is the second podcast in a row I've done where Rihanna has come up. So I'm really excited about
We love her. Live your best life, Miss Rihanna.
it. Oh yeah. Riri. Um, you seem like a very grounded woman, Gladys. And again, it's not easy being a woman entrepreneur. It's not easy being a women entrepreneur of color. I'm curious as to, your mindfulness, how you kind of work through some of your daily habits or your routines that again kind of keep you in the game when this game can be a killer, Gladys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, definitely cultivating space to have
Mm,
downtime and
mhm,
practice stillness
mhm.
and just being by myself is really helpful
Nice.
because I think in the United States, the work productivity culture is that you're in that hamster wheel that doesn't stop
Constantly. Yeah.
constantly, and it's awful, and I don't work that way, right? Especially in
Mhm,
the industry that I'm part of currently, it
mm,
works that way,
mhm.
but I don't feel my best when I'm not operating in the way that I have
Right.
to.
Right.
So, sure, I can give you 150% of my efforts, but if I'm not okay, what makes you think I'm gonna go above and beyond? So, I think one of the best things that I do, honestly, I'm very happy to say this, but I've been waking up early and also having 30 minutes of exercising. And it
Oh,
doesn't have
great.
to be a
Yeah.
high cardio, just like
No.
recentering myself. I like
Yeah.
to read. I like to have fun me time in the morning
Mm.
because then that wakes me up, that brings me joy. And then it's like, okay, how do I start my day after
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yep. Yeah, even
Yep.
just 10 minutes, right? Like I try to do just a 10-minute wake up of some, very low impact yoga, but it's just that mindfulness and that centering, and you kind of
Mhm.
picture what it is you want to focus on for that day, even within that 10 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
and I think all of us, because we're on this, like, at least for myself, sometimes you're in the hamster wheel, and
Hmm.
it's like it's okay to stop. And I think, especially, I was talking to somebody at the community event yesterday about us women of color entrepreneurs. We have so much social societal pressures and even
Yes.
internal pressures to keep going and keep ahead, and it's okay. But sometimes it's okay to stop and reset or reflect. Or if you're gonna fail, that's okay too, because that you can recalibrate yourself to keep going,
Mm.
because from that lesson learned, it can take you in a different path that you didn't see beforehand. So I think for me, yes, I represent my community in all these voices. However, I don't speak for everyone, and that's
Right.
why I'm here to learn too.
Yeah, I
So
get that. Yeah, Gladys. I think the other thing, and again, I can never understand your situation because I just can't, given the difference between you and I, but I
yeah,
can try to learn and I can try to appreciate and I can try to empathize. I feel like too, as women of culture entrepreneurs, you're also kind of like expected to be the voice of what's not correct, what's wrong, where the injustices are. So that's another like level of responsibility. Like it's hard enough for you to kind of attract clients, build a sustainable business, stay true to your mission, stay true to your values, but then also expected to be like the voice of injustice at the same time. It's a lot to carry, Gladys.
it is. But then this is where I come in. It's like you can do both,
Mm,
right? Like a lot of people historically, as businesses, didn't want to voice their political concerns, or
right.
they didn't want to express any type of lack any type of dissent, I like to say,
Yeah, dissent is a
because
good word. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because they didn't want to, because they were scared. But part of me is like, that's not how I operate, and that's not who I envision
Mm,
this business to be. And it's
mm,
okay to voice your concerns, because and I get it, not everybody's going to fit my target market, and that's
right.
okay too. But at least I'm voicing what I feel is necessary at that time, and also being tactful and remembering who is my audience too when it comes to those pieces. And I think for myself, when it comes to social political justice, I mean, it's in my mission statement. If you're
Right.
not picking it up from those keywords, maybe I'm not the right person to work with, and that's fine too.
Right. That's okay. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay, because I'm sure there's other companies that will fulfill your needs, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, in the end, it's always taking a step back and reflecting, who is it that I'm trying to reach with what I'm about to speak to.
I appreciate that. So
Yeah.
we've been speaking with Gladys Muñoz, founder of IntiNova Consulting.
Thank you.
Gladys, I want to go back to your comment at the beginning of our conversation. You mentioned mom, you mentioned your aunt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm assuming they are big mentors, supporters for you. Tell me about the other mentors in your life that play into your work and how you approach your relationship with your mentors.
Yeah, so I think my mother and my aunt, they're supporters, mentors in different spaces, I would say, because I think with
Sure.
mentors, not everybody can fit my needs. That's why there's different
Right.
mentors
Yeah.
for different things. I would say for my other mentors, they're definitely women, women of color.
Mm.
And I think it's different industries too,
Mhm.
because just because you belong to one industry doesn't mean that you have to limit yourself to that mentor. So
Yeah.
one of my current mentors, she works in finance, which is
Mm.
a very big industry. Like she has her financial certificates, so she helps, her mission is to support financial
Right.
literacy among underserved communities. So how
Mhm.
do we open a 401k? How do you invest? And she was one of the
Great
people,
skills to learn.
great skills, which 10 years ago, I was kind of learning, but then it was limited resources support. Now that there's
Yeah.
information out there,
Right.
it's different.
Right.
So she sent me these books that I read and all of these pieces. We would catch up. And it was really insightful to learn about all of those pieces because it's a huge misinformation out there of like financial literacy in general. It's very disorganized sometimes because some companies will say this, other companies won't say that. But she pointed me into like the correct sources because in this era of fact checking, you never know what you're
You never
getting.
know. And look, and the financial industry
Yeah,
doesn't have a great track record when it comes to people of color, right? I mean,
it's
yeah,
true. It's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
And so she has been really great at be like, oh, okay, so if you have this money, how do you diversify your portfolio? So it's like really great. And she and I are really good friends too. And she's also a business owner as well. So we've been supporting each other in that space. And I've connected her with people. She's connected me with people. It's also about with mentorship is not it's also an important concept of not gatekeeping because
Right.
I think historically speaking, in BIPOC communities there's a lot of gatekeeping with systems, but
Yes.
sometimes we tend to gatekeep with each other. And I'm like,
Hmm.
why?
Why are
We're
we doing
supposed
that? Yeah, it's hard
why are
enough
we doing
already. Yeah.
right? And it's like we're a community, we have the same current limitations.
Mm.
What can we do together to bring down the walls? And that can be hard for some folks not understanding that mindset, right?
Sure.
Because it's so fixed. But part of a growth mindset is like, how can we work together or what can I do to support this outcome, right? Is there other ways? So I think for myself, it's how can I go there with my mentors so we don't gatekeep information and how do we build each other up too? It's bi-directional too. And I think that's what I look for in those type of relationships. It's not just learning, but it's also how can I help you too?
I really appreciate that. I mentor a lot of folks, and sometimes I do feel like it's very unidirectional, and some of the mentees, and I'm not casting any dispersion on them or anything like that, or throwing any shade on them, but sometimes mentees don't really think about how it can be bidirectional, right? So it's refreshing when I think someone does really kind of consider that bidirectional aspect of the mentor-mentee
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I want to ask you the dreaded entrepreneur question now, which is if you only knew then what you know now, how might things have been a little different for you in your entrepreneurial journey? I guess what I'm trying to say, Gladys, is really what kind of, was that surprise for you or that, that big moment, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons learned, I would say, is
Fair enough. Yeah.
reaching your community might not be easiest as you think,
Hmm.
especially when there's different cities,
Yeah.
different ideas. So, for example, the event that I went to was a great starting point, but it also made me think, why did it take me so long to get here? Is
Right.
it because it's not communicated in the channels that I myself, try to visit? Does it mean that I have to walk door to door? Which, if you think about it, that's like a lesson approach right now, except when it's
Right.
campaigning season, right? But a lesson learned, it's like actually be like, how do you reach your people? It's very different than as opposed to like, let me go on social media and let me do
Right.
this, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. But I would say, all in all, a lesson learned for me, it's like when you want to reach out to, in my case, my target market's my community,
Right.
try to do a little map of like where are they
Hmm.
because you would think it's available on the internet, right? Because sometimes we're limited time, but I think that's a step back and that's a very Peace Corps thing. So if anybody joins Peace Corps, the first thing they ask is to create a little map, and I can't believe I forgot about Because it's true, because then you're like, okay, if if Don Julio is the main bakery here and there's a competition here, how can, do you know what I mean? It's
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that tool was like far in the ethers of my mind, but now I know it's like,
Pulled
okay,
it back to the front. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Make a little map of like, where do you think they are? Kind of
Yep.
like a list.
Yeah, no, I'm very visual, so I appreciate that. Like a lot of what I try to do is always have pen, paper, always kind of sketching things out very visually. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Um, when you think about IntiNova Consulting and where you're headed next, Gladys, I'm curious
Yes.
as to, what are you most excited about right now?
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited about is doing business workshops.
Oh,
And I know some folks may seem like, why? There's like free ones by the Small Business Administration, and there's other these like free programs.
sure.
However, I've come to realize they don't really go beyond the business plan and marketing strategy and social media
Mm,
strategy. I think part of making educational accessible and for people to actually leave with tools and remember me is actually to focus on these specific like workshops themes,
right.
right? So I'm having one on innovation for women biz owners
Mm,
coming this month, October 20th. And historically speaking, these innovation workshops are thousands of dollars, and
right.
a lot of people can access them.
No,
And
especially small businesses, right? Yeah.
right. And so I'm like, well, I know how to do innovation. How do you turn a challenge or a pain point into an innovative solution?
Nice.
And so I'm having one and I'm very excited. And if anybody wants to come out, please let me know. We have limited seating. But I think having these workshops are really great because I definitely believe in training to training model
Yeah.
because I don't know everything. But if I do have some subject matter expertise, I definitely want to showcase that information
Mm,
because it only takes one person, to learn from that to say, okay, this is what I practice too, right?
yep.
So that is the future. I think that's one of the greatest future strategies that I'm having is like the business development workshops and also
Yes.
to build community support, right? Because I think, in consulting, it's a lot of referrals and business
Of
to
course.
business,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Which is great. But I'm like, we're doing in a different approach. It's business to community, as I like to say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, not business to consumer, but business to community, which I
Community.
really appreciate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
they're the greatest market research folks. Like
Mhm.
people don't think about this, and it's
Right.
like, well, this is what I'm trying. This is my mission. This is what I'm doing.
Right.
How can I actually get them engaged in that aspect?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young women entrepreneurs that are, they're maybe I don't want to say fledgling, Gladys, because that's not the right word, but maybe they're feeling a little bit like they can't maybe move forward, or they're feeling a little stuck or something to that effect, right? And this might be very early on, much less developed than you are today. But when you think back, Gladys, to those instances where you were feeling that, little bit of inertia or stuck, what advice would you give some of those young women entrepreneurs today to kind of unstuck themselves, I guess?
I would say go to nature. And
Mm,
this might seem like a weird answer, but it's
interesting
not.
answer. Yeah,
So a lot of our um ideas best come from nature. And that might be from my Incan roots.
maybe. Yeah.
Maybe, but also how I practice my day-to-day is giving acknowledging nature. And the
Mm,
reason I say this is that there's a concept of biomimicry, which is an
mhm.
innovation concept that you draw your business ideas or for products or services from nature. So I'll give an example. There is that plant that it's like a little circle that has like little spikes and it gets stuck to you,
Oh, sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that's
Yeah.
called, but
Right.
that idea was used to create the Velcro.
Yeah. There you go. That's an
And it's
amazing
yeah,
assimilation you just made there, right? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm stuck or overwhelmed, just take a step back,
Mm,
disconnect, even if it's for like a weekend or even a day, go to the woods, go to the beach, go unpack and try to gather your thoughts and that will bring you the next best step.
I love
And
that.
it may not help some others, but if you don't have the capacity to go to like a nature or like a hike or a beach, go sit in a park.
Right.
Go observe for like an hour and see what
Keep
you
your phone in your pocket, observe,
pocket.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
And try to connect because the best ideas come from that,
I
or
love it.
even the best reset spaces come from there, right? And
That's it.
so
Yeah.
if you want to take it to the next step, look around and look at nature. So,
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. We have been talking with Gladys Muñoz, the founder of IntiNova Consulting. Throw up some of your socials for us so we know where to find you, Gladys.
Yeah, of course. So you can find me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at IntiNova Consulting. And like Richard said, we're having upcoming workshops. You can check
Yes.
out on Eventbrite or Humanitix for tickets and more.
I love it. I love all of it. Gladys, once again, thank you for your time today. We wish you the
Of
best of
course.
luck, and we'll look forward to keeping a close eye on IntiNova Consulting and all the great work you're doing in your community.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.